We all know that I absolutely love the charger type enemies in this game. So to see a level like this one where the main enemy types are chargers and giant chargers makes me quite happy. Although it also makes me sweat a little bit, since chargers are a fair amount more threatening than regular strikers as shooters. And nothing in this game really terrifies me as much as a couple of giant chargers rushing me down like a bull does a matador. Let's just hope that, like a matador dodges a bull right before the strike, we too dodge death and make it out of this level alive. Hello everyone, Professor Scaly here, and welcome to the alternate R4C3 level guide. Like always, we're going to be starting off with your loadout, and this time around that is going to be a biotracker, a mine deployer, a seafoam launcher, and then any sentry of your choice. When it comes to the biotracker, there are many different reasons why I'm recommending this. There will be chargers in this level, there will be giant chargers in pitch black darkness zones, there will be infectious fog, there are going to be scouts, there are going to be shadow type enemies if you go for secondary. Just many different things that make it so having a biotracker on the team will help out tremendously. When it comes to the mine deployer and the seafoam launcher, these are going to be our primary means of dealing with pretty much every single one of the alarm doors in this level. Plenty of doors will be able to shut mine and seafoam, and we're going to be even going a little bit further where during some of these alarms, we're actually going to keep seafoaming the doors over and over again while the rest of our teammates work on the scans. That way we can keep enemies out for as long as we possibly can. The reason for this being that a lot of the alarm doors in this level will spawn in chargers for the most part, as well as a few regular shooters for some weird reason. And chargers are a bit more resilient than that of regular strikers and shooters. So if we let them get in way too soon, we're going to have to shoot a whole lot more, which means we are going to be going through our ammunition like crazy. And since we have to deal with an error alarm at the end of the level and finish off the rest of the main objective, which will consist of pretty much nothing but chargers and giant chargers and scouts, it would be a good idea to have not only everybody topped off on ammunition before we initiate that final bit of the level, but also have 2, 3, or maybe even all 4 people holding onto ammo packs. That way we can just blast our way through all these enemies and not have to worry about running out of ammunition before we make it back to extraction. As for that sentry, you can take any of them that you feel like. If you want something for staggering, then auto sentry or maybe shotgun sentry. If you want something that's better at killing, then maybe burst or sniper. It's completely up to you and your team. I personally don't find myself really using a sentry all that often in this level, as mines and seafoam will do most of the work, and I'm fine with just spending a little bit of extra ammunition here and there to clean up the last few enemies from a alarm door wave. So I would recommend that whatever sentry you bring in, make sure you aren't putting too much tool refill into it. Mines and seafoam are much more valuable in this level if you know how to use them properly, so we're going to be putting most, if not almost all of the tool refill in the level in those two tools. So you can fill up your sentry a little bit here and there, but try not to use too much tool refill into it, otherwise you might not have the tool refill you need for the mine deployer and the seafoam launcher to make the strategies I'll be sharing with you work properly. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to retrieve a specific fog turbine, which will always be located inside zone 153. And you and your teammates are going to be starting off inside zone 148. Now, before you do anything, you're going to want to hop onto the terminal that's in the first room with you, and you're going to want to use it and list how many power cells are in the level. The reason for this is because there is currently, at the time of me making this guide, a bug with the level where sometimes one of the power cells you need for your secondary objective just simply does not spawn in. So if there's 4 of them, you're going to want to restart. If there's 5 power cells, you're good to go, and you can continue on. After that, moving forward into the zone itself, zone 148 will consist pretty much only of charger enemies if I recall correctly, and there are going to be a few resources here and there, as well as a fair amount of fog repellers, which you're definitely going to want to pick them up, as a good portion of this level will have infectious fog in it. At least it will until you complete the secondary objective, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. So go throughout the zone, deal with the enemies, grabbing resources and fog repellers. Your very first bulkhead key will also be located somewhere inside the zone, as well as the bulkhead door control and door to the overload sector, but you're not going to want to do anything with this quite yet. We're going to go and do the secondary objective first, and then we'll come back and take care of overload later. The other thing you're also going to want to check is, as you're going through here, you'll be able to find a few security doors, one to zone 149, 150, and one to 151, and ultimately we need to head into zone 151. However, that security door is locked and requires a color keycard, and as you probably could already guess, that keycard will always be located either in zone 149 or zone 150. So hop onto a terminal, query that key card, and then figure out which one of the two zones you're heading into. Then once you know and you've taken care of everything else in the zone, you can start setting up your defenses, as both of these security doors are going to have Class 3 mixed alarms tied to them. As you can see with the map overlay, if you're heading into the west, which I believe is zone 149, this is what your setup is going to look like. There's quite a few different locations that these chargers can spawn in during this alarm, but thankfully there's only 3 doors that lead directly into your room, and I believe most of the time they'll either take the northern door or the southern door. So what I recommend you do is shut all 3 of them, place a mine on every single one of them, and if you want to, you can place just a little bit of seafoam, but you don't want to fully seafoam the door quite yet. Instead, you're going to want to wait to see which door they're actually going to be going to with the help of the biotracker, and then as soon as you finish that initial full team scan, the person with the seafoam launcher is going to rush over to that door and re-seafoam it fully once all the seafoam breaks off, and then they'll go back and join up with their teammates as they are going to have to deal with the sustained scan that's at the end of the Class 3 mixed alarm. If you're heading to the east though, which I believe is zone 150, your map overlay looks like this. Pretty similar, just a little bit different. There's only 2 doors that lead directly into your room. So again, just shut every single one of the highlighted doors and then place mines on these 2 doors. And then you could just wait to see which one they're going to be taking first and then run over and seafoam it. Once you have got everything set up though, activate the alarm. And once this has been completed, deal with every single one of the chargers still left alive. And then you can head into whichever zone you're going into. As for zone 149 and 150, they are very similar to each other, completely covered in pitch black darkness. There will be strikers, shooters, giant strikers, as well as a few regular chargers in these areas, as well as usually 1 scout, so be very careful of all of them. But go throughout it, deal with the enemies, grab resources, and resupply with them, get some more fog repellers if need be, and also keep an eye out for that color keycard. Once you have everything from inside the zone, you can head back into zone 148, go to the northern end where you'll find that security door to zone 151, and then you can just plug that keycard in and do the full team scan that is tied to the door. Then, when you go into it, the very first room of Zone 151 will have a fair amount of enemies, usually, as well as some spitters. And then the second room, and pretty much everything else that is tied to this zone itself, will be covered in infectious fog. So what you're going to want to do is, after you deal with the first room, go down the staircase, open up that door, and then hold that room, as you're not going to want to try to stealth clear it, as that's going to consume a lot of your fog repellers. So just shoot your gun, let everything come up to you, deal with them up there. And then when you go down to that second room, what you're going to want to do is head to the northwest corner of it using fog repellers, open up that door, and then immediately hug the right, and over there you'll be able to find your bulkhead door control. If you're doing just the main objective, then you're just going to do that scan, and then we're going to talk a little bit more on how we can complete the rest of the level at the timestamp that you see on screen. So if you only care about the main objective portion of this guide, jump to that time and I'll meet you there. Everybody else though, we're going to be doing the secondary scan, and then once it's done, we're going to back out of this room. We don't have to grab resources in here or clear it out. We'll take care of that later, but we're just going to go back through the door we came in through, shut it behind us, and then we're going to head to the southeastern corner of that second room. There we'll find another door, and that will lead us to where our secondary bulkhead door is. Go into there, clear out every single one of the enemies, and then you're going to want to set up your defenses really quickly, because this security door to zone 264 is going to have a class 4 alarm tied to it. And as you can see with the map overlay, there's only 1 location enemies could possibly spawn from, and they're always going to go through these 2 doors to get to us. So I would recommend that you shut and seafoam both of the doors right away, and then mine the door that leads directly into your room. Then when you're working on the scans, same thing as before, you're going to throw fog repellers throughout the room so you can freely travel throughout here without worrying about the infectious fog. And the person with the seafoam launcher, you may need to run over and re-seafoam that door depending on how your scan RNG is. Or if the scans are being pretty merciful, you're not going to have to re-seafoam the door at all. You'll be able to finish every single one of the sets of scans, and then the door will break open, the mine will deal with most of the enemies, and you can just simply shoot and kill the rest. Then when everything is dead, you can open up the bulkhead door and head into zone 264 itself. Upon entering into zone 264, you'll see that your secondary objective is to find 2 power cells and bring them back to the generator cluster, which will actually be located in the room with you. And aside from that generator cluster in here, you're also going to be able to find a fair amount of resources, a decent amount of enemies, both small and big, and you'll also be able to see 1 scout patrolling about. And this entire zone is just 1 big room, so try not to wake everything up if you can avoid it. Go throughout here, deal with the enemies, grab resources and whatnot, and once you got everything you need, you can head to the eastern side where you find the security door to zone 265. This security door is just simply going to be a full team scan, so finish that scan and open it up, and head right on in there. Inside of zone 265, you'll be able to find your very first power cell, so whenever you grab that, you can take that back and put into the generator cluster. This will actually lower the fog a fair amount, which can help you out not only for this zone, but especially for the next one. But you will want to be careful while looking for it, as this zone will consist of strikers, shooters, giants, as well as usually a few regular shadow strikers. So go throughout this entire zone, deal with the enemies, grabbing resources, look for the power cell. Again, once you find it, go back and plug it into the generator cluster immediately. And then once you're done with this entire zone, you can head to the far eastern side where you'll find the security door to zone 266. This security door though is going to have a class 6 alarm tied to it, so let's take a look at a map overlay. As you can see, there's only one possible spawn location for the shadows, which, yep, that's right, all the enemies during this alarm are going to be shadow strikers, and there are 2 different doors they could potentially go through. So I recommend what you do is shut both of them, mine both of them, and C-foam both of them, and then once you finish the full team scan, person with a C-foam launcher, you might be able to pull this off, you might not be able to, but you're going to want to rush back there as quickly as you can and figure out which one of the 2 doors they are hitting, and then just run up to it and re-C-foam it. If you can pull this off, you can actually keep both of these doors C-foamed for almost the entirety of this alarm. It is a little bit difficult, but it is doable. If that's not the case though, and even one of those 2 doors break open, I highly recommend you just simply fall back and regroup with your teammates, and then you can just rely on the person with the bio tracker to tag them as they get closer, and you can just deal with them in the room while you're working on the scans. Either way though, once you finish every single one of the scans and all these shadows are dead, you can open up the door and head into the zone. As for zone 266 itself, in here, fair amount of stuff to take note of. You will be able to find your second power cell somewhere, which once you find this, you can take it back, but do not plug it in right away. The zone itself will be covered pitch black darkness, and most of the enemies in this zone are going to be shadows as well as shadow giants, and then 2 regular scouts. So go throughout here, look for that power cell, grab those resources. You don't have to kill everything in here. And once you're done with everything inside the zone, you're going to backtrack all the way to zone 264. And then you're going to want to set up a few more defenses. Because once you plug that second power cell into it, generator cluster is going to do a typical thing where the lights will go out. And then once they come back on, a class 4 alarm is going to be initiated. And as you can see with this map overlay, there are a few different locations that enemies could possibly spawn from. Now, when it comes to the eastern side, there are those 2 doors, but there is a good chance that both of them will be broken down. If one of them is still preserved though, you can definitely use it for this alarm, although it is not guaranteed to get use as enemies might funnel in through the other broken door. As for the western side, you may notice that this door right here is already broken open because of a previous alarm. This door is still intact, so go on ahead and shut it. You do not need to mine it. I typically actually don't. I just simply shut it and maybe C-foam it if I feel like it. And this door right here, you're actually going to want to leave open as this is going to be important for an upcoming alarm, which thankfully you are able to go back there fairly easily since the fog has lowered a bit. You'll only really have to use 1 fog repeller to safely get to the door. So before you plug in both the power cells, you can head back there, open up that door real quick, and even if there's a lot of enemies in the room, you can leave them be as the odds of them getting pulled into this alarm is very unlikely. The last thing you can do also is just simply place your sentry facing one of the 2 entrances or just keep it on hand. It's completely up to you and your team. Once you have everything set up exactly how you want to though, you can plug the second power cell into the generator cluster, and then once the full team scan appears, get onto that and then get to work on all the scans afterwards. Once you finish every single one of these scans, you and your team can regroup and head to the southern end of the room. There you'll find a security door to zone 267, which has now unlocked. There's no scan tied to the door, so open it up whenever you want, but be careful in there. Zone 267 itself is just a single small room. In here there will be resources for you to collect as well as your second bulkhead key, and it's usually guarded by 2 shadow giants. Once you got to all the resources though and your second bulkhead key, you can then head back out into the main sector. All the fog in the level, by the way, is now going to be purified and it's actually going to elevate quite a bit. So you don't have to worry about infectious fog from this moment on. However, that regular fog is going to be a bit of an issue when you go and do the overload objective, because that is at a higher elevation, so most of that sector is actually covered by this fog. But you're just going to backtrack toward the beginning of the level, go to that door control for the overload objective, plug your bulkhead key into it, do the scan, and that will unlock the security door to zone 320. That door just simply has a full team scan, so finish that one, and then you can open up the bulkhead door and head right on in and get started on your overload objective. Upon entering into zone 320, you'll see that your overload objective is to collect a DNA sample from a specific HSU, and this HSU will always be located either in zone 321 or zone 322. Inside zone 320, as you could probably already tell, there's a lot of dense fog in this zone due to us finishing the second objective. So it's going to make things a little bit more difficult for us, but overall, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's better than the alternative of doing overload before secondary. So yeah, we're just going to have to deal with it. I would recommend holding on to some fog repeller stacks, but not necessarily using them to traverse throughout here, but rather save them for later when we have to do a specific thing. So inside zone 320, there are going to be a lot of different rooms. These rooms will have a fair amount of enemies in them. There will be strikers, I believe, shooters, as well as chargers, and there will also be 2 scouts patrolling about. So go throughout the area, deal with the enemies, grab resources, and resupply with them, and also keep an eye out for a power cell, as there's always going to be 1 cell somewhere inside the zone, as well as 2 generators, each of them being tied to their own security door, specifically the ones to zone 321 and 322. So before you plug that power cell into a generator, you're going to want to hop onto a terminal to see which one of the two zones you actually have to head into. Then once you know, go to that security door, see which generator is tied to it, and plug that power cell into the generator to gain access to the door. As for these two security doors, they are both going to have class 4 mixed alarms tied to them. So let's take a look at some map overlays. If you're heading into what I believe is zone 321, your map overlay is looking like this. So what I recommend you do is shut all 3 of the doors, mine all 3 of them, and then also place a little bit of seafoam on each of them. Not enough to fully reinforce them, just enough to buy you and your team time. Because again, just like earlier with the secondary, you're going to do that initial full team scan, and then you're going to rush over to whichever door they are currently trying to break down, and you're going to keep re-seafoaming it over and over again. If they are coming from multiple different doors at the same time, then don't even bother with this, since there's a good chance that while you're trying to do that, you'll probably just get attacked from behind and potentially go down. So just let the door break, but if they all do come from the same direction, just keep seafoaming the door until that sustained scan appears at the end of the alarm, then go back to your teammates and finish it up with them. If you're heading into the other zone though, which I believe is zone 322, your map overlay looks like this. A little bit more simplistic. Again, there's a few different locations enemies can spawn from and a few different doors you could shut to just simply buy you and your team time, and there's only 2 doors that lead directly into your room. It's a pretty small room, so yeah, just shut every single highlighted door, mine the 2 that lead directly into your area, and then just simply wait until you see which direction they're coming from and just keep applying that seafoam over and over again. Once you finish all the scans though and all the enemies are dead, you can then head into whichever one of the 2 zones you and your team are going for. As for these 2 zones, they are fairly similar to each other. There are going to be chargers, giant chargers even, strikers, shooters, and I think for the most part that's about it. I don't believe there are any scouts in either of these 2 zones. So what you're going to want to do is go throughout the entirety of the zone, clearing out every single one of the enemies, because there will be an error alarm we will have to initiate once we finish that HSU scan. So even if we leave enemies alone in a side room, there is a chance they might wake up because of the error alarm and come after us, so best to deal with them all right here and now. And once you have dealt with every single one of the enemies in the zone and you know where the HSU is, you can initiate that scan, but you're not going to want to finish it quite yet. Because like I said, once you finish that scan, it's going to initiate an error alarm for the rest of the level. This error alarm will spawn in 4 chargers roughly every 45 seconds. So before you finish the scan, what you're going to want to do is just resupply as much as you possibly can. Heal everybody up to as close as you can get them to 100. Make sure everybody's ammunition is looking really good. All the tool refill is being put into either the seafoam launcher or the mine deployer, or if you have a ton of it even afterwards, put some of it into the sentry. And again, make sure you have a few fog repellers. You really only need about 2 or 3, so if even one person just has a stack, that is good enough. And if you need resources, feel free to go throughout any of the previous zones in the level. Use terminals, take a little bit of extra time. 5 or 10 minutes of prep work here could potentially save you from having to get back to this point in the level in a different run, wasting a good hour or so of your time. And once all of your preparation work is done and you're good to go, you're then going to want to finish that full team scan, and as soon as you do, you want to book it out of the zone ASAP. What you're going to want to do now is head back into zone 320 and go to that blood door that takes you to zone 321, because that security door is going to unlock, and inside of that zone will be your 3rd and final bulkhead key. However, this blood door is not a typical blood door. It's not going to spawn in a ton of regular strikers and shooters or hybrids or even chargers. It's going to spawn in a singular tank. So what you're going to want to do is, as soon as you open that door, throw a fog repeller or 2 down in that area. That way the fog is not an issue. It can more easily deal with the tank, and just blast your way through him. Spread out a little bit. Biotracker person, keep your head on a swivel, as you do not want any chargers from the air alarm to just sneak up on your teammates. I've seen a lot of groups lose a lot of HP or ammunition here because they take too long killing the tank, and then they just keep on getting attacked from charge wave after charge wave. But assuming you can survive this point and you do it fairly efficiently, as soon as that tank is dead, you can rush into the room, open up the box or lock with the bulkhead key, and then just book it on out of here. Nothing left for you to do for overload, so you're going to go back into the main objective portion and run all the way back to zone 151. Once you get down there, you can just go into the room with the bulkhead door control, plug the key into it, and then do the full team scan for the main objective, and that will unlock the security door to zone 152. And before we continue on talking about strategies, let's just do a little transition, because the people who are jumping ahead to this point should be arriving any moment now. Alrighty, so welcome back to those of you who jumped ahead to this moment. So all that's left is to take care of the rest of the main objective, but an important thing to preface is that those of you who are doing a main objective only run, first of all, you still have infectious fog in portions of the level, so you have to keep that in mind. People doing a PE run do not have that situation, but those of us who are going for a prisoner efficiency run, while we don't have that fog, we do have a charger error alarm going on in the background. So I'm going to be treating the rest of this guide as if you're doing a prisoner efficiency run, so I will be telling you to pull rooms and move quickly. But if you're only doing a main objective run, you don't have to do that. You can take pretty much all the time in the world that you want. You just have to be careful of that infectious fog. So continuing on, we just unlocked the security door to zone 152. This security door though is going to have a class 3 mixed alarm tied to it. And as you can see with this map overlay, there are a few different locations enemies can spawn from, or at least there are in a prisoner efficiency run. If you're doing a main objective only run, that southern spawn point is the only area as that eastern security door isn't open, so they cannot spawn over there. But for everybody else, you've got 2 spawn points. As for your doors, again, this is going to differentiate a little bit depending on what type of run you're doing. But for the prisoner efficiency run, people, you're going to want to make sure that these 3 doors are shut. And then this door right here that leads into your room, you're going to want to make sure you mine that and seafoam that. But you're not going to want to do that until you're ready to activate the alarm, because you don't want a charger wave to spawn in and break that down prematurely. So wait for a wave to spawn in, maybe deal with it, and then quickly get the door set up, and then get to work on the alarm as quickly as you possibly can. Once you finish this alarm, do not open up the door right away. Wait until the door breaks down and deal with every single one of the chargers first. Then once everything is dead, you're going to have 3 people stay out in the zone away from that door while 1 person is going to head in. Because inside zone 152, there are going to be a fair amount of chargers, giant chargers, and a single regular scout. And because you have a charger air alarm, you don't really want to waste time trying to stealth your way through here. So I recommend 1 person with a long-range weapon, like precision rifle, or maybe a choke mod shotgun, or a sniper rifle, or whatever works best. Go into that zone after the biotracker person has tagged that scout, and you're going to look for it and kill it as quickly as you can. You might be able to get a really clean shot on it the moment you walk into the room, or maybe you'll have to wait a little bit for it to get into a better position. You just ideally want to shoot it and then run out of this room and go into the northwest corner like you can see me doing in the background footage, because out here we have a really nice funnel. Once you've killed every single one of the chargers as they have come out to you, you're then going to want to pack up your stuff and quickly get into that zone. Zone 152 will have a lot of resources in it, and it will have a beautiful funnel point at the beginning, as any chargers that come in from the outside are going to have to jump down that ladder. So 1 or 2 people could just sit there defending while the other people run throughout the room, grab resources, and resupply really quickly. And then also, you're going to want to check for a color keycard, because the security door to zone 153 is at the northern end of the room, but it requires a keycard in order to get into it, which will always be located either in zone 154 or 155, both of those security doors being located inside this room. So if you're heading to zone 154, you have to go to the far western side, which this will just be an open door. There's not even a scan tied to it. But if you're going to zone 155, you're heading to the eastern side, and that door has a full team scan. When you know which one of the 2 zones you're going to go into, you're going to still have 1 person who's defending, although they might want to move a little bit away from that ladder and closer to your security door. That way, their gunshots won't wake anything up, but they can at least help you out. And the other 3 people are going to be heading into that first room, and you're just going to want to blast your way through everything. Zone 154 and 155 are both covered in pitch black darkness, and in here there will be nothing but chargers as well as giant chargers. So you don't have to worry about scouts, but a zone filled with giant chargers covered in pitch black darkness is not really something you want to mess with too much. So I find the easiest thing to do is just blast your way through room by room in a more controlled setting when the enemies come out to you. That way you don't have to worry about an arrow wave spawning ahead of you and then waking up a whole lot of stuff, and you're in the middle of a room filled with enemies that you're trying to sneak past. If you're heading to zone 155, your terminal is right there in the first room, so you can use that to ping the location of the keycard as well as any resources you might be in desperate need of. If you're heading to 154 though, that first room, you're going to want to go to the southwest edge of it, where you'll be able to find 2 doors. Take the northern door of the 2, and literally right on the other side of the door, you'll be able to find your terminal. Ping the keycard, and once you know where it is, 1 person can try to sneak off and get it if it's close by, or if it's really deep in, just all 4 of you group together and just blast your way through this area, and just being very cautious not to get surrounded by enemies. Once you have collected your keycard though, you're all going to be leaving the zone, and then you're going to want to do a little bit of setup. Because after you plug that keycard into the security door to zone 153, you'll see that there's going to be a class 4 mixed alarm tied to it. And as you can see with the map overlay, there are a few different spawn locations for enemies. Now obviously you're not going to be opening up the western and the eastern zone, so you can completely ignore 1/2 of this, but even then, a fair amount of enemies will either come from the west or east as well as the south. So what I recommend you do is, if you open up the western zone, make sure these 3 doors are shut, mined, and seafoamed, and then your sentry is going to be positioned towards the southern end of the room at that ladder, because any enemies that come from the south have to jump down that ladder, which again, really beautiful funnel. As for those of you who have opened up the eastern zone though, you're just going to want to shut, mine, seafoam these 3 doors, as these are the ones they might go through, and again, your sentry will be facing towards the southern end of the room towards that ladder. Once you and your team are good to go, activate the alarm, quickly get to work on the scans, but keeping your eye out for those chargers, make sure they do not sneak up on you and completely overwhelm you. And once every single one of the scans are finished, You're then going to want to deal with any of the chargers that are still left alive, and then you can handle the next zone one of two different ways. Inside zone 153, it's just one big room, and there will be a single scout in there, a fair amount of regular chargers and giant chargers, as well as more resources, a disinfect station, and your fog turbine. So you can either walk right on in as a group of 4 and just shoot the scout from a distance and let all the chargers and giant chargers come to you and just blast your way through every single one of them. Or if you want to, 3 people can stay outside in zone 152 and just stay a little distance away from that security door so their gunshots don't wake anything up. But they're also in a position that no matter where the charger wave comes from, whether it's the west, the east, or the south, they'll be able to deal with every single one of them, and none of them will sneak by and go for the person inside zone 153. Whichever one of the two methods you take, up to you and your team, but once you have that fog turbine, leave the zone, everybody stick together, and you're going to slowly walk all the way back to the very beginning of the level. Once you get back into zone 148, you'll be able to find your extraction scan where you drop down to the level from, and the moment you step into it with that fog turbine, it is going to cause a proper extraction alarm to initiate that is going to be spawning in a fair amount of chargers. So if you want to, once you get there, maybe place a few mines down, spray your C-foam all over the floor, place down your sentry, and just make sure that you are ready to hold out for a bit. As this extraction alarm will take a little while to finish, but assuming you get there all in one piece and you have a fair amount of ammunition, you should be good. Hold out for a bit against the waves of chargers, and once that scan gets to 100%, you are done and you have completed alternate R4C3. And that's all there is to it. Alternate R4C3, in my eyes, is actually a fairly brutal level this rundown. I find myself having more difficulty beating C3 than I do with completing either R4D1 or D2. And now, I'm not saying that the D tier missions this rundown are pushovers by any means, but going into them with a proper plan doesn't leave a whole lot of room for error. However, the error alarm in C3 can very quickly bring your run to an end if you're not on your toes and keeping your head on a swivel. I suppose that's what throwing a lot of chargers and giant chargers into a level can do to a person. Ah, God, I love charger enemies so much. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that I was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks to this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you would like to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join my lovely community, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might be interested in. Among those links being one to the official GTFO merch store, which, as always, I highly recommend you check it out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast and you're looking to pick up some pretty cool merch. Until next time, you might want to load up Kovacs or Aim Lab, as there's going to be a lot of shooting in the next level, and hopefully, I'll see all you wonderful people in the next video.